Okay, Paul, thanks for sending in your swings. I appreciate your patience. I've been super busy, as you can imagine, between 120 hours a week of work and trying to still be in a marriage. Anyway, so I'm going to get right into your lesson here. We're going to talk about the things that I talked about in the analysis, but I'm going to clear some things up, talk about options, and figure some things out for you, okay? So here's essentially what happens with your swing. We get our armpits out just a little bit of the pressure's in our toes, but what happens with you is basically immediately there's no real turn, the butt sucks under you, the head pulls off its start line while you just kind of lift your arms up like this. So if I have a chair behind me, which I happen to have one, because I do a lot of online lessons, as you can imagine. So if I have my butt against this chair and I had something on my head, you're out a little, and then immediately you come out of your bends and you don't really turn, you just kind of like lift your arms here. So we don't get much hip turn or depth to our turn, okay? And that's a big problem, especially for broad-chested guys or people that have limitations like you had a neck surgery. We need to free these hips up. This is the real key to getting any kind of turn at all. You've got to basically turn to where you feel like your belt buckle is back at the camera. You're going to have to turn these hips a lot more. You're going to have to let this femur rotate. So if I was on ice, my foot would slip like that with my right foot. So I'm turning like that. But of course, we're not going to let it slip. But that's the feeling as that femur bone turns and gets this hip really deep. So in face on, you're going to see that I'll create space because my hips are not round. So if I'm in a box here and I keep turning, it's going to create space here on that chair. So you're going to see this space created. I need you to create space there. That's getting a good deep turn, which is that just so happens to get us depth. So if I do that same move, look at how deep my hands go now. They're way in there. But if I don't turn at all and lift, see, I have no depth. They're way out here and not back here. Unless I just cheat it and try to pull them back there, but that's never going to work, okay? So here's the deal. You have no turn, therefore you have no depth. And then from here, you're kind of across the line and you slide. That's never going to shallow. So what your matchup is, you're out a little, you come up, stand up out of it, get here, your shoulders flatten off, you have no depth, and then you slide with this shaft across, and your hands start working out, and your club face is open. Then you have to throw at impact to try and square. So it gets further from you. That's why you address the ball on the toe, because you'd be hosling or shanking everything otherwise, okay? So it's this matchup of no turn, come out like this. You basically are steep, and then you try and shallow. When you slide, you're tilting, trying to shallow, but your face is open. So at the bottom, you have to just kind of straighten and cross. Then your arms pull across you, and you get into that little bit of chicken wing. From face on, you have too much tilt, like I talked about. So in the backswing, your pelvis is forward, you have too much tilt, so you slide a little bit, you have a small bump, which makes it really hard to turn, because if I'm linear, it's really hard to rotate, as opposed to really turning everything, okay? So you've got a lot of tilt. When you start back, your head moves the other way. You bump and your head moves toward the target a little because you're too tilted to start, unless you're trying to hit up on a driver, which you weren't because you had an iron. So you're here, you bump, you don't turn, and then your head goes toward the target a little, and then you end up in a position like this, where you really don't have any shoulder turn, your hips haven't turned enough to help you out, and then you just slide and tilt. You get your hands pretty decent here, but then your face is open, so you have to throw it. You release early, and with all this tilt right back here, it's hard to get that pressure forward. And more importantly, I would say your pressure's really forward because your hip was over your lead side. but more importantly, you're releasing early. And that's what caused all these low point issues. Because when you release in the middle of your body, you could top it, you could chunk it, depending on when you time this release. And at the same time, your head, because you have a lot of tilt, it moves toward the target and then it drops back again. Well, if it keeps dropping back, you're gonna chunk it every time because it's gonna be hard to get your weight forward. Even if your hips forward, you're still hanging a bunch of weight back here. Or you won't slide it back as much, and all of a sudden you might thin it or top it. So it caused a lot of low point problems. So there's lots of matchups that you could work with. Like I said, I mean, if you're like, hey, I don't want to do a lot, you could basically just learn to get in a little bit better position with the shaft more over here. If you're not going to be able to turn much at all, or, well, I shouldn't say not be able to turn, because I believe you can 100%. Like if I had you here, I could show you and move you, and I'll bet you I could get your shoulders turned about that much at least, instead of like where they're at right now. And it's all with this hip turn. That's it. So like if you stand here and bend your knees just to touch, cross your arms on your chest, turn everything, your hips and everything as much as you can. I mean, I can get pretty far still. I'm you know, almost pushing 50 here and not the most flexible, but I can get, you know, 130, 40 degrees of turn. I have to turn my hips a ton though. My belt buckle's at the camera, but I can get a lot of turns. So if you look at it this way, you can see a lot of turn there. And then if I crunch a little, that's a great position just to be at the top. Now, I don't need you there. I don't expect you to get there. But I think you could get this far and then crunch. And that's going to be a lot better than here, okay? I think it's just a matter of you learning how to turn correctly. And it's mainly this hip and this femur bone learning to turn back, create space. So like, if I had a rag, Hogan used to talk about doing this. If he had a rag in this back pocket and he had a window back here, he's gonna wipe this window this way. So we're basically gonna wipe it this way. See, yours is gonna wipe it this way. So like, if you look at this, and I have a chair here, I'm gonna wipe it towards the target. My pelvis or tailbone's gonna travel towards the target. Well, I get this pocket nice and deep, okay? Now, yours would slide the other way toward the camera a little bit. And you try to turn, but you really can't because you're sliding instead of turning it the other way. So if you just practice against a chair, staying against it, but sliding it toward the target so that you, like I said, you learn to create a little space here, that's gonna really help you get more shoulder turn. And if you could even get to a point like this, like the matchup I like for you is to get to a point, so get your posture adjusted, and I'm gonna send you a video to help you with that. Get a little more early turn, meaning with these hips staying deep on a chair, and get your hands in a little more instead of out here, so they're a little, left arm's a little more across you, and have your shaft maybe not across, but more pretty much in between. So almost like basically at ball line or just slightly inside of it, okay? With your hands deeper, and learn to swing on a plane that is more here and out this way feeling, as opposed to across, steep, and then trying to do something to save it later. And remember, a lot of it goes back to face issues. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to work on couple things I'm gonna have you focus on. I want you to work on your posture. I'd like you to work on getting a better turn like I've talked about with this hip, okay? And I'd like you to work on getting your hands deeper, which they should automatically as a result of this turn. Get them a little bit deeper here so they're more in line with your right shoulder or even behind slightly for you because you have a shorter swing. That's a good matchup, okay? And then learn to swing more in to out. I've got a drill that's going to really help you, which is going to fix your plane and get me on your will, which is pretty cool. I can always use more money. Anyways, but right here, and then swinging more in to out, okay? Instead of, like I said, a cross with no depth and then sliding. Because if I get crossed up wherever I am, even if I'm all the way up here and I slide, that's not going to work too well. But if I leave my hands up and rotate, now I'm going to shallow it right out. You're not doing that. And for now, instead of trying to totally change your pivot, I'd rather just help you. I mean, of course, it'd be nice if we could learn to, once we stay on this and create a little space here, you shouldn't want to push as much, but you may still, because you've probably slid for many, many years. But if you could just feel like you created space on a chair, like I said, and then work more on getting your left hip around this way, that would be helpful. But I would suggest very highly that before you start rotating more, we get to a better spot where we can do that. Because if I have you here with no turn and you rotate now, you're just going to get more steep. So I want you to get deeper first and learn to swing in to out. Then we can start to add rotation later on. But I need to take you to this crazy place first where you're very under the plane, okay? So couple ways to do this. I'm going to show you a cool little drill station right now that'll help you do this, okay? I'm actually going to stop this video though and start another one because these large files are a little tough to send.